It's a nice cold morning here in Michigan. I figured we could have a nice fireside chat just like FDR. Remember, FDR would have fireside chats during the Great Depression to try to calm people down, to try to make people feel positive, assuage their fears during the Great Depression. And it's just a beautiful cold morning here, snowfall in early March. And I don't know if you can get a good picture of the lake there with the screen in the way, but it's a pretty day. Snow on the ground. And remember, FDR's first fireside chat was about the banking crisis, the bank holiday, explaining to people why he shut down the banks. And so today we are going to talk a bit about, not about the banking holiday or fireside chats per se. Eleanor Roosevelt used to say people would come up to her years and years and years after FDR, her husband, had died, saying, "I miss the way that your husband would talk to me. He really connected to people via the radio." And today we're going to talk about two civil rights leaders, Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. Now, I've heard from a couple different sources that he would pronounce his last name Du Bois. So that's how I'm going to pronounce it the way he pronounced it. However, I know it does look like it's DuBois, but we'll just pronounce it the way he pronounced it to kind of, I think that's the way we should pronounce it, the way he pronounced it. We also have these questions with Carnegie or Carnegie. My understanding is Carnegie pronounced it Carnegie, even though most Americans don't pronounce it that way. But let's start with, let's be good. Let's start. Yeah. Well, they can see the fire, yeah. And we'll start with Booker T. Washington here. Guys, Booker T. Washington focuses on gradual change. Get a job, economics first, become a carpenter. And once you get a job, hey, fair, honest white people pay black people the same amount if they're doing just as good of a job. So gradual change. Yes, we want the right to vote. Yes, we want to end segregation. But first things first, it's a long path. The first step on a long path is economic change. Get good paying jobs. Try to leave sharecropping if you can. Become a carpenter. Become a plumber. Get good, honest jobs where you can make a decent living. That way you build self-respect. That way you earn respect from honest whites. He secretly does, he doesn't want to rock the boat too much. He secretly does donate money to people trying to get black people the right to vote. We're talking both these men, late 1800s, early 1900s. But he doesn't want to rock the boat too much. Economic changes first. And he creates a Tuskegee Institute to help black people gain various skills for jobs, like carpentry and becoming an electrician and plumber, and types of jobs like that. Tuskegee Institute's also famous for during World War II, training African-American pilots, the famous Tuskegee Airmen. He's literally born a slave in Virginia. He's literally born a slave in Virginia. And he lives much of his life here in Alabama, where the Tuskegee Institute is. And remember, in states like Alabama, during his lifetime, many black people are lynched. Maybe this is why he has more of a gradual approach. He's born a slave. He sees firsthand the violent reactions that people can get for proposing change and racial change and social justice and so forth. And so perhaps this makes him more gradual, Alice, I said be quiet. And so maybe this is why he's more gradual compared to W.E.B. So when you look at this, guys, he's going to be more gradual. W.E.B. is going to be more now, more immediate. So W.E.B. Du Bois is a little bit younger than Booker T, but they're alive at the same time. They actually get into debates. They criticize one another. They argue one another. W.E.B. argues for immediate change. And so he focuses on not just economic rights, but social change, the right to vote. He creates the NAACP, which is still around today, to promote civil rights. He also does things like he talks about he has a Niagara movement looking at basically civil rights is unstoppable, like the Niagara Falls. You can't stop the Niagara Falls. And the Niagara movement, they go to Niagara Falls to symbolize this. And unfortunately, none of the hotels up there in New York will allow them all to stay at the same hotel under the same roof at the same time. And he's like, why? You guys aren't segregated? And they're like, yeah, we aren't segregated. We let black people stay here all the time. But not this many, because it will upset and disturb our white customers. And he had to go to Canada before he finally found a hotel that would allow all of them there at the same time. Now, guys, he's born in Massachusetts and in a small town, and he didn't realize that racism existed until he was a teenager. So he's very insulated from the world's problems. If he didn't realize that racism was a problem until his teens, he's very insulated. Both his parents were part white, part black. And he didn't realize racism was a problem until his teens. That's a lot different of a life than Booker T. Washington, who was a slave, I believe, for the first 9 years of his life. So they have completely different upbringings. One a slave until he was 9. The other not even realizing racism is a problem until he starts to become an adult. And perhaps this is why he wants immediate change. Change now. W.B. gives this famous speech, The Souls of Black Folk. And he talks about how racism, if we accept it and don't demand immediate change, that black people will become polluted in their minds and accept a second-class status position. And whites will also become polluted in their minds and expect to be on top. This is a lot different than Booker T. Washington, who literally at times talks about, hey, white people, we can be as separate as in the fingers, meaning accepting some forms of segregation, but as one as the hand. Booker T. Washington even calls out white people, saying, look, you allow all these white immigrants to come in from places in Eastern Europe and Southern Europe, and you treat them relatively equally. Yet we've been here for centuries. We've been here working with you, toiling with you, sweating with you, bleeding with you. We fought in wars with you. We've cried when your grandfather died. In fact, a lot of people would say that, it was the old black hands that would cry the most when a white master had died. And we've been here all these centuries with you, and yet you give these white immigrants from these strange places basically equal rights that you refuse to give us. What's up with that? And so Booker T. Washington kind of criticizes that from that kind of immigration angle. How can you let Lithuanian have equal rights when we don't have it? And we've been here all these times, and the Lithuanians only been here, a year. So you can see the sharp contrast between Booker T. Washington, slow, gradual, get jobs first, we'll get the respect as it comes, versus W.E.B., who's immediate change. We need it all now. There's an opera house in New York, and we're going to have a protest because they don't allow black people to be patrons, to visit, to buy a ticket. Booker T says, hey, that's absurd. Most of us can't even afford the ticket. Why are you worried about integrating the opera house when 99% of us can't even afford it? That's why we need this economic change. We need jobs first. Well, we need to change everything because otherwise we're polluting everyone's minds if we accept this. So you can see they go back and forth. They argue who's right, who's wrong. That's not for me to tell you. But you can see here, who do you guys think is right? You can put that in the comments. Who do you think Martin Luther King Jr. would agree with? Maybe he would agree with W.E.B. in the sense that you read Letter from a Birmingham Jail, it's talking about not waiting, immediate change, change now, not waiting, the polluting of minds. You can kind of see that in there. Or maybe he would agree with Booker T. Washington because it was just a completely different era back then. Who knows? But put that in the comments. Who do you agree with? Who's best for the time period? Who would MLK, Martin Luther King Jr. agree with? And guys, stay safe. I hope you're having a good day. Don't forget to study. And have a wonderful day. Enjoy the snow before it melts. And stay warm. Study, guys. Get college credit.